Have you been experiencing tons of emotions lately that are driving you to eat more than usual? Maybe you have wrestled with emotional eating and you're trying to figure out what are some other ways that I can cope with my emotion and actually figure out what's going on. Are you looking for insight and support, how you can move forward with your health goals and not have to worry about emotional eating and really find that breakthrough? Well, I'm so excited to share this episode and an upcoming webinar with you. On this episode, I just share 5 powerful steps that you can do to really break through in your emotional eating journey and just really find peace with food. We talk about acknowledging that you have emotions and you're struggling. We talk about solutions. We talk about figuring out the root. But most of all, I want you to know that this is something you shouldn't be ashamed of. It's something that a lot of us wrestle with because we're dealing with things and we're not quite sure how to cope with them in a healthy way. I have had a very poor relationship with food in my past, barely eating, overeating, emotionally eating, all this sort of stuff. And these 5 things have really helped me and many of my clients find that breakthrough that they need. So listen to this episode to get a summary of what those 5 steps are, but then make sure you join us live. I'm doing a free webinar and workshop on February 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern called my Emotional Eating Breakthrough Workshop Webinar. And it is a space where we'll go into these 5 steps a little bit more in detail, and you can really create answers for yourself, a kind of a plan for yourself to understanding what is really going on and how to even move forward. And then, of course, on the webinar, I'll share more about how I can support you in that process. So sign up for the webinar below in the show notes. Make sure you join us live. I'll actually be giving away a free coaching session for one lady who attends live. So make sure you join us live. And I just can't wait to really see you find peace with food and really move forward in your health and find that breakthrough in emotional eating. All right, enjoy the episode and see you on the webinar. Hey, you're listening to the Sustainable Weight Loss Podcast, and I'm Brian Wilkerson, your host. Over 7 years ago, I lost over 30 pounds after going on a dieting roller coaster for many, many years, and finally finding a way of eating, exercising, and living that supported my goals and also that led to sustainable weight loss. And ever since then, I have been longing, and I have been actually doing it and leading other women on the same journey, because my heart is to see every woman finally ditch diets, lose weight that lasts, and thrive in their whole health and life. And so the work I do as a coach, the work I do on this podcast, everything I do is to really serve women in that capacity. So on this podcast, you're going to find solo episodes, interviews, and all together, what are you going to find? You're going to find inspiration, encouragement, and a space where you can feel safe, supported, and empowered to go on your journey. So be sure to listen in, rate and review so other women can find this podcast, and also join my healthy and sustainable weight loss community to unpack these episodes and get more support. All right, ready? Let's dive on in. Hey friends, welcome back for another episode of the More Than Your Weight podcast. I am so glad you're here. And today I am talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and it is one of the things I have struggled with in my past, as well as something that I love supporting women through. And that is emotional eating. It's understanding it, overcoming it, breaking through in it. I just think as women, we have a lot of emotions that we deal with, that we hold, and we're just not, it's just hard to figure out how to process them, hard to figure out how to really acknowledge them. And so I want to talk with you about 5 powerful steps to really help you find your emotional eating breakthrough. And really, whether it's something that you think you do every now and then, or something that's repeated. And before I even start though and talk about those 5 steps, I want to say 2 things. One, I'm actually doing a free webinar on emotional eating breakthrough on February 15th live, and I'll be giving a free coaching session on that. And it's just going to be like a webinar/workshop where really we can work through these 5 steps. I call them my emotional eating breakthrough blueprint. But I also want to just start and say that this is not something you should feel ashamed about or feel guilt about. I just think we are all dealing with hard things in our lives and all dealing with hard emotions. And we all cope with those emotions in different ways. And sometimes those ways are like healthy and uplift us, move us forward, help us process, help us deal with it. And sometimes they don't. But we're all prone to, at some point, really not giving ourselves the space or the time or even the love to just process and deal with what's going on. Okay. And so just know that you're not alone, and let's just remove the shame or guilt before we even start this conversation, because it's more common than you think. But that doesn't mean we cannot find victory or breakthrough in it. If I did, I know that you can too. Okay. And so let's go through these 5 steps. And again, these are stuff that we'll cover a little bit and way more in detail in my webinar and workshop. So you're going to want to join that Emotional Eating Breakthrough webinar on February 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Sign up for that, okay? Because and you want to attend live, because you really get that live experience, that coaching experience to guide you. So the first thing is acknowledge that you need support and you're struggling. As women, I think many of us struggle to ask for help when we need it most. We're busy caring for others, we're busy doing our jobs, or we've been told we're too emotional. Really, that's really what we've been told. When really, we all have emotions, whether it's sad, upset, angry, apathy. It's even like some people say that's a lack of emotion, right? Men and women. But we feel things. And I actually think as women, we're designed to be feelers in many ways. And either because we've never had a safe space to process that, or we've been told to not feel those things, that we don't. Now, I think there's a time and place. If you have to deal with a situation, maybe it's not the time to explode over it, but I think you should explode later. I just think we need to acknowledge that we feel things, that we're struggling, and we need to acknowledge that we need support. We need space to do that. And so I just remember early on in my journey, my faith had a lot to do with this freedom process and this breaking through process. And I remember really confessing it to a Christian mentor at the time, I just struggle with emotional eating. And I feel like and I realized that it's a problem, and it's holding me back from joy. It's holding me back from peace, and it's holding me back from just really living a healthy life. And I just think that act of just acknowledging it, that I struggled with that I had emotions that I was dealing with, that I wasn't processing the way that I want, just really started that journey for me, that acknowledgement, right? So 1, acknowledge that you have emotions. It's normal to feel emotions, but acknowledge that you might need some support in dealing with that. I think the second thing is to then try to figure out what are the cues, what are the things that are leading you to emotionally eat. What are what should you be asking yourself? What should you be looking out for? And I think for many of us, it's different. It could be stress. It could be finances. It could be a hard relationship. It could be bringing up a memory of something in the past. But either way, we need to figure out the root, because we're all, like Brene Brown talks about this, around shame and vulnerability. We can easily numb our emotions. But when we numb the painful ones, we can also numb the positive ones. All right. And we all do this again in a variety of ways. And some of us, that's using food to do that. Okay. And so figuring out what's at the root, what is the common things? Where are you when you feel like emotional eating? What do you feel like? Who's around you? What is the situation is also very, very, very important to kind of, help you break through this. And some of these steps I've done separate podcast episodes. I think back in October, either 2019 or 2020. It might have been October 2020. And I'll try to link those in here. But yeah, I did a podcast episode just on the root cues and questions and how to figure out the cause. I just think it's this reflective exercise of just asking ourselves, okay, what's really going on, is probably even an act of self-care that we have not applied to ourselves. We just think it's something we do. We just think we don't have self-control, but in reality, there's a lot going on. All right. But again, this is something we're going to try to do together in a small capacity, an hour webinar on the webinar. So you're going to make sure you join live. And this is also something that I do with clients in our one-on-one sessions, just regularly creating the space of figuring out what is leading us to this broken relationship with food, and how can we shift that? Okay, so number 1 is acknowledge that we have emotions, we need support. Number 2 is try to figure out what's causing those particular triggers or the desire to emotionally eat. And then figuring out strategies, the go-to things we can do in the moment when we feel like emotionally eating. What are those things we can do in that moment, right? When the urge is really on. And there's a lot of different things we'll do, and we can talk obviously more about this in the webinar, but there are some simple things to kind of again, I think one, it might be distract your mind, take some space to process it, take some space to breathe, Sometimes, grabbing a more nutritious snack helps too, but either way, there are things that we can do in the moment, but we've just created a habit of emotionally eating. So we need to create a new habit. Okay. And that's something I want you to help you figure out on this particular webinar. But again, I just think it could be as simple as like drinking a glass of water, waiting 10 minutes till the craving passes. Like there's tons of examples we'll go through. And again, you can listen to the past podcast episodes on that. But what I love as a coach is just like, yeah, there's all these ideas, but what's one thing that can work for you? How can we boil it down to figure out your unique family needs? Maybe you feel stressed in a situation where you actually can't exit the situation. So what can you do internally or mentally or even physically while you're there in that situation to calm yourself down? Okay. So one is acknowledge you need support and you feel emotions and it's normal. It's just, we process hard things. And then 2, figure out what's causing you to emotionally eat. And 3 is what are some things you can do in the moment when you feel like emotionally eating. And then some things are like, what are some things you can do in the future? Like proactively to manage your emotional eating. If there are certain causes that are leading you to emotionally eat, we want to then figure out, okay, when I'm in this situation, what can I do to avoid this situation? Or what can I do to like have some like go-to emotional eating strategies on hand for the future? Okay. This might be a little bit similar to what you can do in the moment, but it may differ because when you're in the moment, you're feeling heated, you're like, I just want to right now. I don't care. But so it's like, you really need to that's more like, how do I deactivate my stress or fight or flight response so that I can go into this restful state quicker in the moment. Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's many things you can do in the future that are probably similar. Maybe it is a stress related thing that causes you. How do you manage those stress? Whether that's breathing, whether that's walking. We can talk about a lot of ideas there. How do you shift your mindset to create a positive mindset? How can you be more mindful of what's going on? Maybe even being social relationships helps us really do. We're not meant to do anything alone, but I know in the pandemic it might be hard, but like, how can we really foster those relationships so in the future we can reach out? Sleep is another thing. Like when we lack sleep, that really prevents us from, your emotions are just raw. Trust me. I know they're just raw. I know the days where I haven't slept well and I just have my daughter and it just feels like the whole world's falling apart when other things are happening. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm like, I want a piece of chocolate. I'm like, you don't really want a piece of chocolate. You want a nap, So get that nap if you can, or if not, just like figure out something else you can do, right? So being active is something else. And then rewarding yourself when you choose not to, I think is also important, right? And again, we'll talk more about these on the workshop. But 1, acknowledge again that you have emotions, you're struggling, you need support. 2 is figure out what's causing that desire to emotionally eat. 3 is creating strategies and solutions for when you're in the moment. 4 is creating healthy habits to do for the future when you feel like emotionally eating. But then 5 is actually giving yourself grace when you do emotionally eat. Okay, so we're not perfect. And as I said at the beginning, you're not going to like totally not do this anymore. Maybe you will. But if this is something you've wrestled with for a while, it might take time. If we're constantly beating ourselves up or going to this point of like, just forget it because I did it again, you're never going to actually break through. Anyone who's accomplished anything in life that is worth accomplishing has fallen down, but they've gotten back up. And so when you fall down, I want you to get back up. And I would love to be there to support you along the way as your coach. But in general, I just think we need to develop resilience and to see that it is okay. There are times when we fall down, but we need to get back up and start again. Not even just the next day, start again with the next meal. All right. And just know there are spaces. There are times where these strategies can be helpful, but it's also helpful to maybe seek a coach, but maybe seek a professional therapist to really deal with mentally what's going on. Like, don't be ashamed of getting support, whether it's with the coach, whether it's with a therapist, whether it's with something else. I just think we need to recognize that there are things sometimes beyond our capability of handling on our own. And so getting support, which is what I told you to acknowledge at the beginning, getting support is very, very crucial. okay? And so those 5 steps are kind of the blueprint I like to lead clients through, things that we can kind of look at. And, we look at different things here and there, but those are the 5 steps that we're going to go look through on this emotional eating webinar, the emotional eating breakthrough webinar. And so I would love to have you join us in the webinar if you're free. The replay will be available for a few days, but it's just going to be a really great space together to see, one, we're not alone, but together to create a plan for ourselves into really breaking through in these, our relationship with food or with emotional eating. And then, of course, so make sure you sign up for the webinar. And again, make sure you attend live if you can. But I would love to hear from you if you listened to this episode and one of these steps or tips stood out to you the most. Please let me know. Follow me on Instagram at MadeWell345. Join me in my Facebook group, the More Than Your Weight Women's Community, or even email me back if you're on my email list and just say, I think I'm going to try this. This is what I'm struggling with, and again, I'm here for you to support you in this. And that's why I wanted to create a special place on this webinar and this workshop to really guide you through this process. And of course, I'll be sharing more about how I can do that even as a one-on-one coach going forward. Okay. So have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful start to your week. I think as we enter the month of February, where, Valentine's Day is in there, I think, which is all about love, right? But we think we make it about love of other people, which is true. I think we need to love people, but how can you love yourself this month? And I think if you are someone who's wrestled with or is currently wrestling with emotionally eating, I think loving yourself could be showing up for this webinar. It could be really saying, I'm not going to do this anymore because it's not supporting me. It's not helping me. And so just love on yourself. Join us in this webinar. And if you know a friend who would benefit from this, again, we're removing shame or guilt from this conversation, right? Send this link to them. This podcast link or the link for the webinar. I would love to have them join us as well. All right, grateful for you as always, and I can't wait to see you on the webinar. Friend, thank you so much for listening to this, and thank you so much for just being brave and just saying, I want to break through in emotional eating. I want to learn more. Maybe you have, and you just want to continue to learn more to continue on that food freedom journey. So please let me know if any of the steps stood out to you. If you have anything else that you've been doing or trying to do that's worked for you, or you're trying to break through in emotional eating. And then, of course, please make sure you join our free webinar and workshop, the Emotional Eating Breakthrough Session, where on February 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to go through this and really just go through the 5 steps and really help you start to find that breakthrough that you need in a safe, supported space. Okay. Links to everything is in the show notes. And I can't wait to see you, hopefully on the webinar live, to win that free coaching session, but also just hear from you and support you in your breakthrough. All right. See you later. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Sustainable Weight Loss Podcast. I hope you're leaving supported, empowered, encouraged, inspired to go off and really do the things that you know in your heart you need to do and think, right? Because it's not just about what you do, it's how you think and how you feel to really reach your goals and sustain that weight loss. Again, for more support, join us in the Healthy and Sustainable Weight Loss community on Facebook. This is a space where you can really be safe, supported, and empowered through your journey. Just go to madewell345.com/community and you'll be right there, or click the link below. Again, so grateful you're here. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you'll not miss an episode and so that other women can find this podcast. All right, see you on the next episode.